Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Hot Seat. Crashing world energy prices, and the Hot Seat thought we'll invite a man who would tell us all about renewable energy. In the Hot Seat today is Mr. Anil Cabral, a specialist in renewable energy. Welcome, Mr. Cabral, to the Hot Seat.
Thank you for us.
Mr. Cabral, tumbling world energy prices. In Sri Lanka, we have a static electricity bill. It hasn't gone down. And the government plans on 2 more coal power plants. Amidst all the controversy that Noracholi generated and continues to generate, even though it is not generating all the 900 megawatts that it promised. So what is essentially wrong with our power system in Sri Lanka?
I think the major issue that I see is that Sri Lanka is doing its power system planning probably what was based on what was available maybe 20-30 years ago. It is not taking advantage of new technologies and new ways of planning that has emerged as to take advantage particularly of the new renewable energy technology whose costs have dropped drastically.
Right.
In fact, if you take a look at it, while costs are dropping, oil prices are at a historic low, coal prices are low, LNG prices are low, but at the same time, worldwide, the investment in renewable energy has outstripped all other energy, conventional energy investments. So something is changing. Right. I think we have to take note of what's happening internationally and take advantage of what makes sense for Sri Lanka.
And we often hear that coal is cheap. It's cheaper than diesel power. Is it true? How much cheaper is it?
Coal is cheaper than diesel power, no question about it. However, the way coal prices are portrayed when politicians speak or the utility speaks is 6 rupees a kilowatt hour or 8 rupees a kilowatt hour. Unfortunately for Noracholi and also for Sampur, what it does not take into account is the fact that coal is an imported fuel, and when they do their analysis, they forget a simple thing like the currency is depreciating. I've looked at central bank figures for currency depreciation for the last 30 years. The average Sri Lanka rupee depreciation against the US dollar has been 5.6% a year. Right. Which means that if you start with 6 rupees, it becomes 18 rupees, it becomes whatever. The second point is 6 rupees is only the cost of the fuel. I've looked at the Sampur data using CEB's own figures for the cost of Sampur, investment cost of Sampur, which is quite frankly is cheaper than Noracholi, which is, I hope it will be better than Noracholi even though it's cheaper. But when you look at those numbers, you realize they did not include in their costing a transmission line to bring the power from Sampur to the western province, which has the biggest demand. They did not include a jetty to unload the coal and bring it to the power plant. So purely on a capital cost basis, they've avoided costs of exceeding 200 million, maybe $250 million.
So those are understated?
Those are understated, assuming somebody else will bear the cost. In an economic analysis, you cannot assume somebody else is bearing the cost or the government is paying for it. The second point is, for some interesting reason, the quality of fuel that they assume for Sampur is worse than in Noracholi. The efficiency of the plant is less than in Noracholi. Why? I am not so sure. But at a minimum, if you're going to go for coal, let's go for the best, quite frankly. Why go for something worse than Noracholi?
How bad is bad? How bad is coal for the country, for its environment, whatever?
If you do not have adequate environmental controls, not just have the environmental, use the environmental controls. Some environmentalists are telling me that some of the Noracholi controls are not being used as it should. And if you cannot dispose of the considerable ash that is generated, you could have a serious problem in your hands, because that ash contains heavy metals, arsenic, cadmium, and most importantly mercury, that can get into the groundwater or get dispersed. I'm not an environmentalist, so I don't want to talk too much about it. But the fact is, those are issues that need to be looked at. In contrast, I'm not exactly sure, although it's changing in the recent news seems to indicate it, why we are not looking at LNG. At a recent seminar that was held at the American Chamber of Commerce, Salia Wickramasuriya, who is the Director General at the Petroleum Resources Development Secretariat, he said that there are commercially extractable quantities of natural gas, but the problem right now is there isn't the infrastructure on land and the demand that can justify somebody coming in and investing in the extraction technology. So he argues that we have to look at LNG as a bridge fuel on the west coast, taking advantage that it's cleaner, as well as it is much nearer to the main demand center, so you don't have the big transmission cost. And then at the same time use that as a way of converting Kerawala-Pittiya, Kalanithissa and AES combined cycle power plants to liquefied natural gas. That demand is sufficient to justify a terminal to bring the LNG in and what's called a regasification facility, because there is enough demand now across all these power plants. Right. So that has, furthermore, a LNG power plant is cheaper than a coal-fired power plant.
You mean the capital
cost is cheaper.
What does it compare per megawatt? Do you have a rule of thumb?
I think CEB's data showed that in Sampur they were looking at like $1,200 a kilowatt for Sampur, just for the power plant. LNG plant was less than that, maybe 1,000, maybe 900, something like that.
Right, but not a big difference.
It's not a big difference, but the big difference is the efficiency of what's called a combined cycle power plant is much better than a coal-fired power plant. So you have to import much less fuel.
So if you were to operate an LNG plant, can it be operated 24/7?
Yeah, it's designed that way.
And can the coal power plant operate 24/7?
Yes, if it works well.
Okay.
Both are designed to operate 24/7. The LNG plant has like two stages. It generates, it has a gas turbine, then the hot air, burnt air from gas turbine goes into a steam turbine, and the big advantage, if we are really serious about taking advantage of our renewable energy resources such as wind and solar and hydro, etc., big advantage of a combined cycle power plant using natural gas is it can follow the load much better than a coal plant. Coal plant likes to run steadily at the same load. It does not like to go up and down to follow the load, whereas the LNG plant has the ability to operate steadily or follow the load, and which is a big advantage. I mean, we signed the Paris Agreement. President Sirisena signed the Paris Agreement recently, endorsing Sri Lanka's commitment towards global environmental matters. If we are doing so, my concern is that establishing a large capacity of coal plants will limit our ability to take advantage of our renewable energy resources, particularly wind and solar, because of this inability of the coal plants to work well with varying renewables. Whereas LNG has not had that same.
On that note, we'll take a short break and come right back. Do stay tuned to the Hot Seat. Welcome back to the Hot Seat, and today we have Mr. Anil Cabral. Mr. Cabral, so is coal bad news for the future?
If you take into purely on a financial basis, I would say so, because of the fact that such large imports of coal we are going to be paying more and more for it as the currency depreciates. That's purely on a financial basis. On an environmental basis, we have to figure out what damage it could do to the environment, and for that I think I would defer to the environmental people for that. Unfortunately, there have been some deficiencies in the environmental impact assessment done for the Sampur, which I think should be corrected, because ultimately you are going to affect the people in that area as well as the surrounding area.
But they're going to be affected double. There's another plant,
1200 megawatts of supposedly that's called a supercritical plant, which is supposed to have high efficiency, roughly around 44% or something like that. The Japanese want to put it. Beyond that, I do not know. It's a more expensive plant, but it's more efficient, so presumably the advantages are there. But it still has the issue that it will not be able to work very well with the renewable potential that we have in this country.
So does that mean that it's a case of good things no cheap, cheap things no good?
I think that's true, except now, if you take a look at some of the renewables costs, you would have seen in the papers that solar costs are, investment costs are dropping, wind prices are dropping. I just checked, India has a regulatory commission. It's called the Central Energy Regulatory Commission, CERC. They issued in 2015 their benchmark price for solar power projects, and in today's dollars it comes to about $750 a kilowatt.
Right.
Which is incredibly cheap compared to what it used to be. At $750 per kilowatt, I don't think it's going to be that cheap in Sri Lanka, but Sri Lanka costs are higher. Let's say $1,000 a kilowatt. I did a rough calculation. We are talking about electricity at about 12 to 15 rupees a kilowatt hour from solar.
Cost to the CB.
Cost to the CB, generation cost. And this is based on commercial financing, not concessional financing. This does not take into account the fact that if you put in solar, you can get what's called green funds. There is a big facility in Korea called the Green Climate Fund, which right now has $10 billion in funding, and we have not tapped into that at all. So there are sources of financing that will reward us for going green. So let's take advantage of those facilities, and let's not...
Who or which authority in Sri Lanka is charged with spearheading this renewable drive?
It's a sustainable energy, Sri Lanka Sustainable Energy Authority is a lead organization. However, in the power sector, I would say it's de facto the Ceylon Electricity Board who decides what goes or what happens or doesn't happen.
You are a sort of consultant to various projects, including in Africa. You have this, what is it called, Lighting Africa? Is it
Lighting Global. It was Lighting Africa, which was really looking at taking advantage of the advances in LED technology, LED lighting technology, and solar for communities off the grid. As you know, Africa, there is still a large majority of people without access to electricity. So I was focusing on that community. So we started a program called Lighting Global to bring improved quality, the technology quality, and the marketing of these products commercially to rural Africa. It has now gone global. Now you have Lighting India, you have Lighting Myanmar, Lighting Bangladesh. Sri Lanka doesn't need it because
we don't need it. I was about to ask you, why can't we have the same?
Because we are electrified, essentially 100% of our households have grid electricity now.
Well, in that case, there must be pockets of people, because we did a Gum Madda program, a door-to-door campaign, where we unearthed startling evidence of abject poverty and what we call the forgotten people. But in many of those areas too, there wasn't any electricity. There was no electricity.
I think CEBs, from what I hear from the ministry, is by the end of this year they hope to energize everybody. I hope it happens, because we are so very close. Officially it's 98% according to the ministry databases. But
sorry, go on.
No, I think one point I think we need to make is, before we do, and Lighting Global is a good example, before we do building power plants, I think we must realize CEB is basing his plans for adding all these power plants on a very aggressive growth in electricity demand. Yes, we have seen in these first 5 months electricity demand rising quite a bit because of this heat and people running air conditioners, fans, etc. But traditionally, CEB's own data, their own expansion plans, shows that they have overestimated demand growth consistently since 2008.
I see.
So if you have a very fast demand growth, then you have to add more plants. Now, from what I understand during a stakeholder consultation with this regulatory commission, UCSF, they were told, CEB was told to redo the expansion plan based on an energy efficiency scenario called the demand side management scenario. Now, CEB's own analysis shows that if you adopt that energy efficiency scenario, you will not need six of the coal power plants that they had originally estimated. Six. That is 1,800 megawatts. So instead of 3,300 megawatts as they had planned, they could reduce it by 1,800. I think everybody knows that energy efficiency in most cases is far cheaper than building newer power plants. It's certainly cleaner. So that, I think that's the first thing that should be done. Get the energy, get this country as efficient as possible, and then, and Sustainable Energy Authority has the lead responsibility for that. Energize them. I'm not punning, but energize the Sustainable Energy Authority and get them to act, become very aggressive and proactive in promoting energy efficiency. That's number one.
It appears to me that the planning, the generation planning engineers at the CEB have been, for want of a better word, gone to sleep, because what are the plans they have? The minute there's a problem, they say we need emergency power, and probably using the monies that they've managed to accumulate because of the advent of Norchole, they seem to have more money, and we have reports in the press that they are considering buying up these other
the old plants,
the old plants, which are really quite old now. They're end of that.
They get it cheap.
20. Yes, but they get it cheap. But again, it's back to that other saying, isn't it? Good things no cheap, cheap things no good. So, and there's nothing. Nobody's ever doing anything about it, because even though the CEB have entered into all sorts of contracts with private power players, we've never heard of a case where they implement penalties, for example, on the part of them failing to supply power. But instead, they're very happy to go ahead and buy these standby power arrangements. How bad is that? How good is that?
Well, I think the fact is that the weather has been unusual, unusually dry, and increasingly going to be unpredictable in the future, so we have to plan for that. So because of that, the expectations that hydro would provide that backup has not worked, and the fact that one phase of Norchole has been out for a long time also doesn't help, and hence the emergency. So
do you have any knowledge about how old this plant is?
Which one?
Norchole. They say that it's an old plant that was refurbished.
I don't know, and I doubt that they brought it. It's probably more expensive to dismantle an old plant than bring a new one.
So you think that they bought a proper plant?
I guess so,
Okay. We'll have to take another short break and come right back to the hot seat. Welcome back to the hot seat, and today we have Mr. Anil Cabral, a renewable energy specialist. Mr. Cabral, what of wind power, what of wave? There's some wave power? Well, there's all sorts of new technologies that we read about, but almost sadly don't really see here. Though we have, on our trips to Hambantota, we have noticed some wind power things, and then on the west coast we've seen some there too. Can we do with more of those?
Oh, I think so, and at the moment there's 128 megawatts of wind power, mostly in Kalpitia region. And the ones in Mana are very old now. They're dating back from 1996 and 97. World Bank project. It's owned and operated by CB. I don't think they operate it very much now. It's really way past its time. But interestingly, Mana is an area that the CEB is looking at with hopefully with support from either the World Bank or the ADB to develop 100 megawatts of wind power. Mana has probably some of the world-class wind resources. Similarly, good wind resources are expected to be in the Elephant Pass area in the northern province. So Sri Lanka has some incredibly good wind resources. So I think we have to look, and I'm glad that CEB is looking into it, into exploiting those resources, because right now wind investment costs are way down, and the resource is free. There is no exchange rate issue that affects the wind blowing.
In an ideal world, how would you like the CEB, Team CEB, to be? Would you like them to be more proactive, more thinking out of the box, or do you prefer them to be steeped in conservatism as they are now?
Well, I think as a utility, given their responsibility of providing 24/7 power reliably, and they have some sense of conservatism is necessary. I don't disagree. I mean, it's easy for me to talk without having the responsibility of meeting that obligation.
That's true. Yes.
At the same time, they have to be outward looking and see what new technologies, new developers are taking place, and try to integrate them into their power system. The planning tools that CEB has been using, they've been using since they were first introduced with World Bank support in the 1980s or something like that. There have been tremendous advances. CEB has some of the best engineers from our universities go to CEB. Let them be thinking engineers, take advantage of new technologies, how to integrate these technologies. So much of work is happening worldwide, whether it's in Europe or US, nearby in India. You go to China on integrating solar, wind, etc. With respect to wave power, I think it is still at an early stage, although there are some larger scale projects going. I would wait a little to see how those are working before looking at wave power. But certainly solar and wind are two technologies, major potential, and Sri Lanka has very good resources, particularly wind and solar in the south. So why not take advantage of what this country has been blessed with, rather than what is to be imported, and minimize what has to be imported.
Have you done any work for the government of Sri Lanka?
Not directly. On a voluntary basis, I was involved several years ago working on the national energy policy, which didn't come out anyway.
Right.
This was maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
Have they sought your help?
Informally. Informally.
Why are you not taking it up?
Well, if they ask for it, I'm always willing and able to do so. At the moment, I'm working with the government of Myanmar and Bangladesh on renewable energy.
Right.
Sri Lanka, it's been more informal.
Right, okay. And do you think, as an observer in that case, how much of politics gets in the way of proper generation planning?
I think the politics, in a sense, politicians are making decisions without getting full information. If you are making an investment of $1 billion, surely it doesn't hurt to get a second opinion. I mean, if you go for an operation, we get a second opinion. Why not when you are making $1 billion investment?
Probably because it's not their money. It's people's money.
It is people's money, and I think I believe they have to swear an oath on upholding the Constitution. And
Article 28D is the one that talks about squandering state resources and so on. What hope for the environmental impact in Sri Lanka? What do you think? What do you
I think Sri Lanka has a very strong committed people who want to make sure that we do not follow in the bad experience in other countries. If once they get mobilized, we may see that some decisions are being altered. We are beginning to see that in the recent news what I read, where LNG is now being considered on the West Coast, which was not what was being discussed some years ago. It is not in the CV base case plan.
So
I'm optimistic. I'm encouraged by changes. It's still a lot more work to do, and still there are, and I think an honest debate between both sides looking at is well worth it. I mean, we may change our minds somewhat, they may change their minds ultimately.
Would you come on a debate where we have your viewpoint and we have the opposing viewpoint?
Certainly.
Would you think you'd...
Yeah, I'd be glad to do that.
Wonderful. Anil Cabral, thank you very much for having been in the hot seat today. We appreciate your counsel, your concern, and we look forward to welcome you on our network once more. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.